What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Correlation Nation. Today it is May 9th, and we are going to be breaking down the UFC 315 Montreal, Canada card. It's a 12-fight card, I believe, and there's some pretty good fights on this. So anyways, let's hop right into this. And I have part of my notes pulled up already, but it's pretty difficult. We will have to filter through a lot of this stuff. Okay. So the first fight of the night is going to be the Brad Katona Bezcat Almacan. I might be butchering that name, but nonetheless, we're going to do our best to break this down. And let me hop right back over to my notes. So on Bezcat, he's a light-footed striker. He usually throws 2 to 3 punches at a time, and he tends to extend himself, but he's using big power when he does so. Has a nasty kicks, head kick especially. I think this guy's got power in his hands, but he's definitely got power with his head kick as well. And he will follow his opponent to the ground when they're hurt. And this is one of those things that it's good and bad. You know, for me, I mean, at the UFC level, you know, you will have guys that are able to take that punishment and keep on going. And that could come with a lot of consequences. Like, you know, this guy tires himself out a little bit. Or B, like I said, the plus and minus is, the plus is that, you know, if they're hurt bad enough, he'll fall him to the ground and he'll finish the fight. But the negative side of this is they could withstand that beating and take that punishment and then be able to turn the table on him later in the fight. So it's one of those things that I don't really love. You know, I mean, I do like to see a guy that's trying to finish the fight. But the other part of this is I feel like his ground game is a little bit unproven, especially at the UFC level. I mean, it's obviously very unproven. I mean, he fought Nurmagomedov. What's that dude's name? Nonetheless, he just fought for the title, and he did fight pretty well. I think it went to decision. He hurt him in that fight, but like I said, you know, I don't really love seeing him fall him to the ground like that. But he has proven to have defensive grappling because he did defend a lot of submissions from him in that fight. So I do feel that he can defend off a lot of submissions. I'm not so worried about that. You know, I mean it more as like, what's his offensive grappling look like in the UFC? What's his get-up game look like? You know, I don't want to judge him too hard based off that fight because that guy has extremely good control. But nonetheless, he's an extremely well-rounded striker. He does have power, you know, and the big downside is that he's going to extend himself. And when he does so, if he's going against a really good counter striker, you know, they could capitalize on that. But in this fight, this is not going to be the case. So if we pull up... We're going to pull up Katona real quick. Put this up here. That should be enough. Alright. Where are you, Brad? Where are you, Brad? Here you are, my man. All right, so he as well is he's a light-footed striker as well. He is pretty nimble on his feet. He has solid boxing, but he does throw a bit wide. A lot of the punches you see him throw, they're pretty wide. But outside of that, you know, he does have a pretty good guard. But he does this weird, like, he does this really odd movement when he's walking his opponents down. And I put that odd body movement at range. It reminds me of a video game, like some street fighter, like a monster. I don't know. It's odd. I know that sounds probably super silly, but pay attention and you will see what I'm talking about. However, he has average speed. His speed is nothing to, like, you're not going to be impressed with it. The thing that you will be impressed with is his strength. You know, and he tends to kind of work himself into the clinch, and he's strong there. You just see it. He just locks guys up. He has a very strong base. He's not a guy that looks like he's easy to take down. And he's got good knees as well. He's got good takedown defense, and he's overall a pretty smart fighter. But I just think he's outmatched on the feet in this matchup, so I am going to be leaning Begzat, or whatever the guy's name is. Yeah, Begzat. I believe that he's going to be able to win this fight. And let me pull up. I'm going to do this just kind of. Well, I can do it on here. We'll pull it up over here. Let's see his record. 11-2. He's only got 1 submission loss, 1 win, 1 decision loss, 1 win. Umar, that's the gentleman. Yeah, Nurmagomedov. He fought him. That went to decision. Overall, looked like a pretty good fighter. I don't know if he'll be able to get the stoppage, which is a little bit concerning because he has only gone to decision twice, and he's 1-1 in that category. Losing his most recent fight in that fashion. That to me is a little bit concerning, but he was controlled in that fight, and I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case here. I mean, that's not really Brad's game. But let's pull up Brad. Come on. Come on, come on. What the heck is going on here? Well, apparently it doesn't want to load anything. So, here we go. Yeah, I mean, virtually no knockouts. One win by knockout, 0 losses, 3 submission wins. And he's 10-4 by decision. And so, like I said, that to me is a bit concerning. But nonetheless, I really, really do believe that Begzat's going to be able to just outstrike him and hopefully keep his range well enough to not get tied up in clinch positions. And yeah, I mean, let's see how it plays out. But my pick is going to be Begzat. I do believe he's going to win. I don't really have a method necessarily. I guess if I absolutely had to, I'm just going to take decision. But if we go back, let's see what the odds on this are. I mean, I don't know how accurate this is, but minus 155, it's a close enough line that I think that you can just play it. It's not a terrible line. So Begzat is going to be the pick on this, and then we're going to move on to Daniel Santos and Zhang Yang Li. Now, I want to say, I'm not sure. I had some of these guys in my system before, and I'm wondering is there 2 Daniel Santoses, and I might have them confused with another fighter. But nonetheless, let's hop into it. Let's go over here. Santos. All right. So Daniel Santos is a light-footed striker. Kind of got a Muay Thai kickboxer style. He has pretty fast hands and foot speed. Throws hard. Has pretty good boxing. But he can be a little bit wild and reckless, which leaves himself open to being hit. He has nice kicks. He sprawls well. I pair that with the decent takedown defense. He can be taken down, but he has a pretty good get-up game. So, he is fighting Zhang Yong Li, and Zhang Yong Li is... This is wild. Why is it like that? Let's see. Let's pull up Lee. I think this is a tough fight. I remember kind of looking at it and not really having like a super strong lean. I do ultimately lean a certain way, and I will get to that in just a moment. But I have that he's a patient striker, fights with wide stance, so he's open to leg kicks. And as I mentioned, Santos does have pretty nice kicks. He has decent boxing, a quick straight left, and snappy leg kick. Sorry, he tends to drop his guard, and while his power looks pretty solid, he also is a fighter that swarms his opponents when they're hurt. Sprawls well and works to defend takedowns. Ultimately, I do lean Santos in this fight. I think the kicks alone and this guy being kind of susceptible to that just based off his fighting stance. He does have like a wide base, or his foot placement is wide, and so I think that leaves him a lot more vulnerable to these leg kicks. And then when we pull up, and then he drops his hands too. I mean, that's really never a good thing. So when we pull up the fighters themselves, they're both 11-2, and Santos is the underdog. I mean, what's the big difference here? So Zhang Yong Li does have a pretty big reach on him. I mean, you're looking at a 6-inch reach. I don't know. I go Willie, man. Never been knocked out, never been submitted. Just has lost 2 fights by decision. Those fights were to Julio Arce and Murad Kalimov. I'm not sure who that is, but I'd say it's a pretty reputable promotion over there. Zhang Yong Li, he has been knocked out once. That was a standing TKO, so it wasn't like a brutal knockout. Wasn't that bad. It's kind of one of those things that you don't forget. I mean, it certainly happened, but that was his most recent fight. He hasn't really fought a ton of high-level competition. So, I think that for me this is easy. It's another fight where I don't really have a strong lean as far as, method of victory. But ultimately, you're getting a good enough line on Santos to just play the money line. And, I think a little bit later I'll kind of look into the actual bets and stuff. So I will, if you follow, I will try to do a video on that later. I'll try to pick out my favorite bets, and then I'll release that, and that way everyone can see it if they're interested in that. Last week, I'll be quite honest, a lot of my bets weren't so great. I did break even ultimately, but I felt pretty bad about how a lot of that stuff played out. And I kind of went back and watched the tape, watched the breakdowns and stuff, and ultimately I felt like the breakdowns were actually pretty solid. It was more about how I valued certain things, like the matchups, and so I think I kind of need to reevaluate, like, where do I value your takedown defense, or that ability to defend takedowns, and who the opponent is, because one of them was, I felt like the value is truly on what's his face, and he looked like dog crap. He looked like absolute dog crap. It was the heavyweight fight. I can't think of the name right now, but he was getting taken down with ease, and while he moved enough not to allow the fight to get stopped, I know a lot of people that I kind of followed was saying, oh, this guy's going to get submitted, he's going to get knocked out. And ultimately I leaned the opposite way. I kind of leaned towards the other fighter. I thought that he would be able to keep it on the feet and outstrike him. But I was also aware that he had horrid takedown defense. And, it just killed me because I didn't value that takedown ability on Peterson's side against, I still can't think of his name, but nonetheless, I have to be able to try to, prioritize or figure out which one of these things I value more. But nonetheless, we're going to move on. I do think that Willie's going to take this fight, and like I said, ultimately at this point I don't really have a strong lean as to how that fight's going to end. But it's a close enough line. He's actually even the underdog. We're looking at Daniel Santos. Come on, man, let's do this. And moving on, the next fight we're going to be looking at Barrial and Bruno Silva. Now, I think Bruno Silva was actually one. I'm pretty certain there are two Bruno Silvas in the UFC, and so I already had notes on a Bruno Silva, and I didn't indicate which one it was. And so I kind of watched the tape, and I already had notes as well, and I felt like, man, these notes really lined up pretty well. So I kind of went over it a little bit, adjusted them just a hair. But ultimately, I think that those notes I had were for him. But I did watch film on this again. I wanted to be sure that the notes seemed right. So nonetheless, let's go on over here. Here we have Burial. Alright. He's a light-footed striker with decent boxing. He has a high guard, solid kicks, decent footwork, but his timing isn't great. Like, it's really not very good. I feel like he's just behind. He swings right after, it's like swinging a bat and just barely missing the ball. That's kind of what his timing reminded me of. He has average speed, but his output increases as the fight goes. So he does have good stamina. Now, the thing that I would question is chin. Is his chin gone? He's been getting touched up a lot more as of late. And so I think it is a valid question. It's something you certainly want to ask yourself. Is his chin going to hold up? That was a huge deciding factor in last week's fight with Ponzi. I leaned that D-Rod would win that fight, but I had it, and I don't know why I done this. I went method decision. Probably way more than I should have. So it's like, yeah, I got the right fighter, but ultimately he ends up knocking this guy out. And to be honest, not the D-Rod, obviously, he's a pretty big dude and he's a professional fighter. So yeah, he's got some power, but it's not like a regular thing for him to be knocking people out at the UFC level. So I lean that it would go to decision, and that hurt a lot of my bets because he didn't end up knocking him out. So nonetheless, I think we have to question Mark's chin on this, And then he is fighting Bruno, which Bruno's a power puncher. I mean, we're going to pull him up right now. This dude has a ton of knockouts. Let's pull Bruno up. Oh, Bruno, oh, Bruno, oh, Bruno, where'd you go? Here's Bruno Silva. And the notes I have on him is that he's a pressure striker, can be a bit flat-footed. He plods forward with decent boxing, throws a lunging straight left that could be countered. He's durable, decent kicks, solid entries on takedowns, but he doesn't do much with them. So, you know, he's more of a striker through and through. He's not a guy that's typically going to take it to the ground, but in some instances he may shoot for a takedown. It's probably more likely if he's going against a guy that's going to outstrike him. I don't think that's going to be the case here. I think that overall Bruno is the better striker. And even though we are in Canada, I'm going to have to take Bruno to win this fight. Let's pull up a little bit more information. We'll pull up their records and get a better idea of what they've done lately. Marc-Andre Barrel is 35. And he's only got 3 knockout losses, but, you know, he was knocked out by his last 2 opponents. You know, Pfeiffer hits like a freaking Mack truck, so that's not like super surprising. But Dustin's, I don't think he's like a huge knockout guy. You know, and Chidi's also a big powerful guy, you know, gets a lot of knockouts. So it's not the worst thing, but, you know, you're just seeing a trend here that in his last few fights, he's been getting touched up a lot more and more and more. So I do think it's a bit concerning. And I just think that Bruno's probably the better striker here. Not by a huge margin. I just think that, well, let's pull it up. Never been knocked out. Yeah, I mean, this dude's been losing a lot lately, so, I mean, you could see it is. I mean, his back, I don't know. I feel like his back's up against the wall when you look at this and you see all the fights this guy's been dropping. Some of these are pretty good guys. Brendan Allen, Shara. I know Shara doesn't have any real wrestling or grappling ability, but, you know, like I said, that's not really the type of fighters they are. I just lean Bruno. He beat Brad Tavares with strikes. Yeah. I don't know. I lean Bruno. Moving on. Navajo Sterling. This guy's like a pretty legit prospect. Let me pull him up. I remember doing some tape on the guy whenever he was coming in through the Contender Series, I believe. And I remember feeling like, man, this guy's got like a rare blend of like size, speed, and strength for the division. So let's pull this up. See what it says. Calculated kickboxer, flat-footed, stands at kicking range using front kicks and leg kicks, waiting for opponent to open up, has special blend of power and speed for the weight class, Ground game is relatively unknown. And then on the other side of him, we have Ivan Erslan. And Ivan is a big, powerful dude himself. But I don't want to say he's not a technical striker. I mean, I think he is, but he's like extremely flat-footed. I mean, he's just going to stand in front of you like a statue. So, plotty striker. Plotty. It's like a plotting striker. Fights off a straight left. So, that's kind of like what he tends to throw a lot, is a straight left. He has good boxing with a high, tight guard. I've seen people split it. But he can have low output. This guy throws hard, though. I mean, like I said, he's like a statue. He's going to walk you down. And he's going to throw heavy, heavy punches. I just think that Sterling is the more technical striker here. I think that he's more methodical. He's going to pick his shots. I don't know what kind of odds we have here. Let's pull this up. I'm probably a pretty big favorite. Yeah, moderate favorite. He's a minus 300, 330 favorite. Also quite a bit younger. Huge reach advantage. Look at that, 79 to 72. Yeah, I think that this is Sterling's fight to lose, but he is an unproven guy. He hasn't fought a lot of like elite competition, which is a bit concerning. And when we pull up his record, I felt like, I may be wrong, but I feel like in his last fight he underwhelmed quite a bit. Tuco Tokos. I think just because he probably was such a big favorite in that fight. I don't remember exactly, but I would say he was a pretty big favorite. And people expected a lot more of him. You know, knockouts, just, you know, flat from like, just to be more flashy and have a big finish or something. But I do think that he's the real deal. Like I said, he's got a rare blend of size, speed, and power. For that weight class, and I think that if his technical abilities prove to be legit, he's going to be a real contender in this weight class, especially, you know, as he develops and has an opportunity to fight some better guys and improve his knowledge of the game and skill set, just to continue to evolve. I think this guy's going to be a legit contender down the road. I don't think he's quite there yet. But, you know, we just have to see. You got to see what he does with some adversity. You know, what are you going to do when, you know, there's a lot of guys that get where they're at because they're just the bigger, stronger, faster guy. You know, and in his case, for him, that probably was the case. He was just the bigger, faster, stronger guy. And I don't want to sit here and pretend like he doesn't have technical abilities, because I very much think he does. You know, his striking is pretty legit. You know, I honestly kind of like to see him a little bit more light on their feet. That way they're not is open and getting leg kicked and punched in the face or whatever. You know, they're able to evade a little bit better. But nonetheless, you know, this guy is a extremely talented guy, and his best ability is his striking. So we'll just have to see how well he fares, you know, wrestling and grappling and doing all these other things as he proceeds to get a higher level of competition in the UFC. So we'll still, let's see. Let's pull up Ivan. Um, 10 knockout wins, only 1 loss, 1 submission loss, and 2 decision loss. But he did lose a split in his last fight. It was a good fight. Lost to TKO or knockout against Hardick. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's just in the fall of 2023. Lost a decision in 22. I don't know. Let's take Navajo by, I'm going to say finish. You know, just take him by finish. Get a little bit better odds. And then we have Modestas Bukauskas. And then we have Eon. I know that's not the proper pronunciation. But Kudalaba. We'll just go with that. Kudalaba. And Kudalaba actually looked like a world beater in his last fight. And he's done that in the past. You know, I think he is a very good prospect. He just a little bit wild. He's a wild man for sure. Modestas, he's definitely more technical striker. But there's some things that I'm going to pull up right now in the notes that do make me lean Kudalaba. Let's pull this up. Oh, apologize. I am tired. I'm just trying to get this out. All right, Modestas. He is a light-footed kickboxer. He has a wide stance. And again, as I already mentioned earlier, this leaves you open to leg kicks. He has solid kicks, but tends to be more of a counter striker. Has good speed and solid power. Doesn't fight well off his back foot. And he drops his guard when entering the pocket. Doesn't seem to have good get-up game. Styles make fights, and this, in my opinion, is going to be a rough one for your boy, Modestas. I think he's a good technical striker, and these are heavier guys, and clearly he's got some power, and Kudalaba has been clipped quite a few times in the past. But I don't want that to be the narrative here, because we're going to pull up Kudalaba, and if my memory serves me right, the reality is it's actually been longer than you would think. What the heck? So what's up, fighter? Dum dum dum. Kudalaba. Alright, Kudalaba is a plotting pressure striker. Has solid kicks, but tends to throw heavy, wide looping punches. Which can be countered, and then, you know, we run into the question of the chin. How is his chin? He has good speed, and he has big time power. Big power. And he's even a little undersized for the division. But he's got big power. Has good wrestling, efficient takedowns. He does a lot of trips and stuff. That was one thing that was very apparent to me when doing film, is that, you know, it always kind of irks me when you have somebody that could win the fight if they could get to the ground, and they just lack the ability to have more than one option to try to take them to the mat. No, it's not just blast elbows, single legs, body lock trips, judo throws, hip tosses, you know. And I feel like a trip is, you know, when you get that body lock trip, it almost seems like just kind of, you know, for him, you know, he's a heavy pressure guy anyway, so if you can just kind of force your way into the clinch, strike your way in there, grab a hold of him, trip him to the ground. Modestas hasn't shown great ability to get off his back, and I think that Kudalaba is going to win this fight. You know, I'd like to say probably by finish, but I mean, you don't know. Let's pull up the fighters themselves and see what the line and whatnot looks like, at least the setting line. So it's a pick'em fight, you know, minus 105, minus 120. Nothing wrong with these lines. Kudalaba, in my opinion, is the rightful favorite. I like Kudalaba to win this fight. Let's pull up Bukauskas real quick and see. I might have looked at this already, but yeah, I mean, he's been clipped 4 times. One of those was, you know, due to a knee injury, but Petrino, you know, he's got big power, but he knocked him out. Doesn't have great striking. Khalil knocked him out. Jimmy Crute knocked him out. That's not a great look. But, well, like I said, I do think he's a pretty solid fighter, so I don't want to discredit the guy. I think he's got pretty good striking skills. I just think this matchup's really, really bad for him. It doesn't suit him well at all. Kudalaba should win this fight. And, you know, he won his last fight by submission, I believe. But he's definitely more of like a ground and pound type guy. Let's just take him by finish. That's what I think. I'll dig more into it later. Moving on to the next fight. We have Jessica Andrade and Jasmine Jasudavicius. And this is a pretty good fight. It's actually pretty tough. Let's see what the odds on this are. Look at this. I mean, Jasmine's a pretty big favorite. 3-1 favorite. And I think the value is going to be on Jessica just because of that. I do think I think Jasmine's a really good fighter. And she's definitely got paths to victory here. But Jessica's not no slouch. I mean, I know she's been beat a lot. But I think she has some advantages and strengths that match up better to Jasmine's weaknesses than vice versa. Let's be real. Jasmine is a plotty. Let's pull it up. We'll just pull up the notes. And I'll explain myself as I do this. Where you at, Jasmine? Let's pull you up, girl. What am I doing? Oh, what am I doing? I don't really know. Alright. Jasmine. Boom, boom. Alright. Here she is. Plotting striker, flat-footed. Chases, which is a negative to me. She doesn't have very good footwork. She chases people around the octagon. Doesn't know how to cut it off. She has below average speed. And her style is to force her way into a clinch, grappling type of sequence. And then, you know, rough up her opponents from there. She is very strong. She's hittable, but tough. You know, I've seen her beat up pretty good, but she just keeps on ticking. Yeah, physically strong grappler. But the thing is, you know, Jessica's a pretty strong girl herself. I think that Jasmine's going to have a size advantage. You know, length, Jessica's not very tall, whereas Jasmine, I believe, is pretty tall for the division. So it's hard for me to really truly pick a fight on this one. I just think that the value is on Jessica because I feel like the line's a little out of hand. Haven't listened to anyone else speak of this fight yet. This is just kind of my initial thought and opinion on it. So let's pull up Jessica real quick. I have that she's also a plotting pressure striker. Good speed and big power for the division. Has decent striking. It's, you know, nothing too great, but it's solid. Solid enough. Has a good low kick, but everything she throws with her hands is heavy and wide. So she doesn't have clean, crisp boxing. It's, let me get you with something that's going to hurt you. And it happens a lot. And Jazz is pretty slow. So it could certainly happen. Tends to carry her hands low. Has some wrestling ability, but isn't very good off her back. So I certainly think that this is going to play out, or the deciding factor of this fight is going to be on whether Jasmine can put Jessica on her back more than once. And then I do think that Jessica has pretty good takedown defense. She has got a strong base. She's got pretty good balance. And that's why I say that I do feel that, you know, the values on Jessica. But you let me know what you think. I'm kind of torn on this one, just to be 100% honest with you. I think it's going to be a good fight, and we're going to find out a lot about Jasmine's development. You know, is she improving? I mean, I think her speed's always going to be kind of slow, but, you know, is her technique, her striking technique, how much has it improved? How how much has her footwork improved? Because if you got good footwork, a good guard, good timing, you know, your speed's not everything. It's an equalizer if, you know, one way or another, right? So I'm gonna. It's tough. It really is tough. I'm just gonna say, yeah, the value's on Jessica here, but this is a fight you probably don't want too much of. You know, I'm not gonna lay the chalk on Jasmine, so that's just me personally. Anyways, moving on to the next fight, we have Mike Malott going against Charles Radke. This is another one that's actually pretty tough because Radke doesn't have a ton of fights in the UFC. I'm going to pull him up. All right. All right. He's a flat-footed striker, primarily boxing. Leads with a hook a lot, so he does come in with the lead hook. And he's got power, that's for sure. I know that. He has good speed, strong transitional grappler, but doesn't have great ability to finish submissions. And he can fight later in the fight. And then let's hop on over to our boy Mike. I have no idea what happened. What just happened? Guys, what happened? I just don't know what I'm doing. I apologize for my inability to do anything worth a dang. Mike Malott. Alright, Mike Malott is a pretty basic, he has a pretty basic striking skill set. But he manages range well. Throws a nice 1-2 kick combo. I'd say he has just above average speed. Snappy kicks. Nice trips. And he has skilled grappler. And he is a skilled grappler. That's his bread and butter is the grappling. But you can tell that he's definitely improved the striking skill set. And I'm just going to lean Mike Malott on this. I'd say he's probably a reasonably big favorite. And maybe that's not the wisest thing to do. I think Radke's alright. I just think that Mike Malott's skill set is going to favor him in this matchup. But, yeah, let's pull it up. Come on, come on, come on. I'm super tired, guys. He has 4 knockout wins, 2 losses, 6 submissions, 1 decision. So it looks like almost close to 100% finish rate. He's 4-1 so far in the UFC. Was whooping Neal in that fight until he just kind of gassed himself out. And then Radke. Two knockout losses. I'm kind of curious who those were due. Carlos Pratos. Yeah, I remember that was a nasty knee. Fought some pretty good guys, even in the regionals. Austin Hubbard, Chris Gonzalez. I met him at the Iowa card. Like I said, I'm gonna lean Mallah. I just think he's the better prospect. I think they know what they're doing. They're trying to prop him up here. But Radke, I don't see. He's not a slouch, man. This dude's strong. He's got power. You know, technically probably not the most skilled striker. But nonetheless, you know, he's competent there. And I would say that, you know, his grappling is, yeah, I mean, it's good as well. So I ain't trying to shit on the dude, that's for sure. I think it should be a good fight. I just see Malott winning this. And let's look at the odds to this fight real quick. See what's going on there. Again, this is another close line. I mean, these lines are pretty close. You know, I think Malott's is what would you say? Whatever. I think he should be the rightful favorite. I do believe that. Benoit Saint Denis and then Kyle Prepolic or whatever his name is. Short notice replacement. 18-8. I think at this point we all kind of know what Saint Denis is going to do. We'll pull up his notes real quick. We'll do a quick breakdown of him. You know, there's really no value on this fight at all. Outside of maybe, I don't know what the line on the over is, but maybe the over. I don't think Prepolic or whatever his name is, I don't think he's been finished. So there is a chance that the over, but I mean, do you want to do that? I mean, the aggression that BSD fights with is and the pace it's pretty unreal. So let's pull this up. All right. Benoit Saint Denis. All right, check this out. He is a flat-footed striker. He has solid, heavy low kick. Powerful 1-2. He has a bully style in wrestling clinch positions. Very strong. Nasty elbows in the clinch. Throws wide in the pocket. Looks to finish fights. And that's why the over is definitely a risky play, because this guy's going to be looking to finish the fight as soon as possible. That's just his style. You know, he's lost 2 straight, back kind of against the wall. Maybe he learned a little bit from that. You know, he's a pretty green fighter all in all, especially as a professional. I mean, he has a lot of room to grow, which is kind of scary because he is extremely violent. But, you know, that could be, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't, you know, because a big thing that makes him who he is his aggression. And once he loses that, you know, he, like I said, he's not the most technically skilled fighter at this moment. So, and I don't know that he'll ever be that necessarily. He really just uses his strength and his bully style to his advantages, and he just runs over a lot of guys that just can't match his intensity. The pace that he sets it's pretty impressive stuff. But anyways, Prepolic, let's check him out. Where's this guy? I don't know. Where's this guy? Where'd he go? I don't even know. It's got to be in here. Got to be. I mean, where the heck is this guy? Well, oh, it's because I misspelled his name like a dum-dum. I'll fix it later. Anyways, he's a light-footed striker, counter striker. He is active, so what I mean by that is he's not a guy that just is going to step back and just only counter. He stays active, so he will pop some stuff out there. He tends to, I would say he has a solid striking skill set, high guard, solid boxing, good kicks. Average power, especially with his hands, does have good speed. He tends to drop his hands when he throws. And then the ground game is unknown. But, you know, he has been in the UFC, I believe, before. And he fights some reasonably talented guys in the regionals. I don't think he's ever been submitted. So I'm not overly concerned about it. But, well, I typically wouldn't be. But against BSD, I don't know that anyone's really safe. So something you always got to watch out. I think that the value is on Prepelic just simply based off the line. But as I mentioned earlier, there's not really any value in this line. I think that it's like a minus. I mean, yeah. This dude's a plus 750 dog. So it's a pretty ugly number. And then we're going to move on to Alexa Grasso and Natalia Silva. So I don't know. Hindsight's always 20/20, right? And it's weird to me because sometimes when I look back at these fights and I didn't do my own work on some of them, and the two of these fighters are going to be in this card right here, and I'm going to kind of talk about it a bit. But like Grasso, I think she's a very talented fighter, especially when you look at the WMMA world. I think she's very talented. But you know, her beating Shevchenko when she did the way that she did, it was like a shock. You know, I don't think a lot of people. I think they probably suspected she put up a reasonably good fight or whatever, but Shevchenko's like, you know, one of the goats of the, you know, women's MMA world. So the fact that she choked her out, it was like, oh my God, she's just so good and no one's gonna beat her or whatever. But she was literally getting pretty pieced up in that fight until she caught her in that choke. You know, let's be real. And I think most people know that. It's not some huge secret, but I do feel that people forgot. People kind of lost sight of that. And so in the rematches, it was almost like a lot of people were just favoring Grasso for these reasons or because she beat her. And I would argue that Shevchenko won the second fight. And then she did win the third fight. So while I do think she's a talented fighter, I think that Shevchenko is the more talented fighter. And in this case, Natalia is, in my opinion, she is a world beater. This girl, there's something that she has that a lot of fighters don't. And that is that she's a very well-rounded fighter. And she doesn't fight like that. She fights almost like she's one-dimensional, which in my opinion is a good thing because as I talked about earlier with this plus-minus, like following people to the ground, Natalia has really, really good kickboxing skills. Really fast feet. Really fast, snappy kicks. She has good range management. Okay? And then on top of that, she's got pretty legit takedown defense. She's got a really strong base. which is weird because you look at her and you wouldn't think that was the case. She's got a super strong base. And she's got, well, let's pull up the notes because I'm rambling, but clearly I'm leaning Natalia in this fight. I think that Natalia wins this. Let's look at the odds real quick. She's a pretty big favorite, minus 270. So there's not a lot of value on that. I don't know how you would like to play it. It's women's MMA. It could easily go to decision, so you could bet the over. Natalia could knock her out, so you could, I don't know. Natalia money line is the safest way to bet it, in my opinion, but let's pull some of this up. Notes are important. And even though I'm going on and on about Natalia, I would like to pull up Grasso first. Okay. Let's pull this up. Oh, grass. All right. Grasso, light-footed striker, seems to have more of a traditional boxing style. Yeah, you don't see her throw a lot outside of that. She does throw a couple little leg kicks here and there, but nothing too powerful. Doesn't put a lot into them. She has a high guard, straight punches. Negative is she gets caught stepping in by punches and takes down. It's like, I don't know. She has this really, really odd timing of like taking a step forward, and as she's doing it, she gets countered with punches or takedowns. You've seen this a lot in the Shevchenko fight, which Shevchenko does have pretty timely takedowns. She good timing on him, and so maybe it was exaggerated. Maybe it looked worse than it actually was, but I don't know. Something that I just picked up on. I feel like she kind of gets caught stepping in quite a bit. Now, this is a plus minus. She has a very active submission game from her back. But, the problem with that is, she could lose minutes. If she doesn't get the submission, she doesn't get the finish, she could wind up losing minutes there. Now, I was a little bit concerned watching tape on this because I don't remember what fight it was. I think it was the Teresa Blades or whatever her name was against Natalia. She caught her in a triangle, I think it was, off her back. But I feel like Natalia has improved her game since that fight. She's really improved her range management. And so I'm banking on that. I'm certainly banking on Natalia. I think that Natalia will use her footwork and manage his fight from a distance and outpoint her. So I'm picking Natalia. That's my lean. Like I said, my concern is that she could knock her out. But let's take the over. I'm going to go Natalia by decision. And I'm going to say that just based off the fact that Grasso is of Mexican heritage. Usually they have pretty solid chins. She's never been knocked out. It's women's MMA. She didn't get knocked out by Valentina, even though Valentina doesn't have a lot of knockouts on her feet, if any. At least in MMA. So, anyways, we're going Natalia by decision. And then we're going to move on. But, real quickly, because I don't want to skip this because I know I was about to. I'm going to pull up Natalia's notes. That way we can kind of go through them. I think I broke it down pretty well. But, maybe not verbatim. So, we're going to pull up. I think that's how you spell her name. Here she is. All right. Natalia. She's a light-footed striker. Utilizes footwork to maintain range. Has fast hand-foot speed. Uses her kicks like jabs. And counters well with her hands. Plus minus, she does a spin kick. Another thing concerned me was obviously the first fight between Shevchenko. She got caught spinning. Truly, ultimately, what lost her that fight. But nonetheless, I think it's worth mentioning. But let's not get caught up on that too much. Surely she's watched film. Hopefully she just does everything to You know what I mean? Like, just stay away from that. Do not spin. Um, has good takedown defense, strong hips, good balance, even has her own hip toss. Okay, so like I said, I'm taking Natalia by decision. That's the way I lean, and we're moving on. The next fight, we have this one, maybe just like do your own thing. I'm going to break it down the best I can. I'm going to give you the notes I have, but this is an emotional bet for me. I'll tell you all right now. Jose Aldo, I'm a Jose Aldo truther. I've been watching him since WEC days. This dude is a monster. People talk about the GOAT. There's a lot of great fighters at this weight class. Holloway, and right now you have Volkanovski. Two dominant fighters in the same, or was in the same division that he dominated for years. And I respect these guys tremendously. I think they're both great fighters. I learned to really, really appreciate Volk, but I'm not going to go on and on about that. Here's the difference between Aldo and these guys. Aldo was a killer in his prime. This dude wrecked people. You know what I mean? Like, he was such an explosive. And still, at his age, when you watch this guy, his explosion is second to none. Power, speed, I mean, he does fade, but this dude is an absolute monster. And I think the UFC done right by him in this fight by giving him somebody that wasn't just going to try to, like, push him up against the cage and hold him there, because that has been one of his biggest downfalls or weaknesses in his recent fights. In years past, I remember, I don't remember if it was Uriah Faber or Chadman. I don't remember who it was, but somebody tried to do that to him back in the day and had a hold of his leg, trying to take him down up inside the fins, and you just jump up and knee him in the face. I mean, this guy was, he was insane back when. But nonetheless, let's hop into the notes of this. Should be a good fight. I did see earlier today that they moved it up a weight class. I don't know if Aldo missed weight or if they both missed weight. I don't know. But there was a little bit of confusion to that. I haven't really dug into it. I just seen that ultimately it was moved up a weight class to 140. Was it 145? I believe. And I'm gonna plug this in so we don't die out here. All right. Sorry, guys. All right. Let's pull this up. Aldo. All right. Aldo's a pressure fighter. He has excellent boxing, legendary kicks. He's lightning fast, throws almost everything with power. He has timely knees. He has legendary takedown defense as well. But he accepts the cage push. He just will allow you to hold him there. It's wild. I couldn't be more frustrated watching that stuff, to be honest with y'all. I was like, come on, man. Even when you go train, man, you should just be putting yourself up against the cage and working. You should just be drilling that over and over and over again. How do you get off the cage? Or improve your footwork to circle off before you actually get pushed up to the cage. These are things that he really, really needs to improve on. I mean, I know he's an older fighter at this point, so you don't teach an old dog new tricks. I don't know. But I think that these are things that are pretty easily corrected. I don't see why he doesn't improve them, because in my mind, I think that he has all the physical ability to actually still be a champion. I really, truly do. Call me crazy, whatever. But I think that he could probably be a champion if he improves some of these things. I mean, Merab's the current champion. Merab couldn't even take this guy down. He had literally done the same thing, just held him up against the fence. And Aldo definitely had, I mean, you could, I don't know. I'm not going to say you could argue he won it, but in my mind he did. Him defending 18 takedowns or whatever it was in that fight, and certainly having his own moments in that fight. I think you can make the argument that he won that fight. And so, yeah, I think that he could certainly be a champion. The other thing is he does have low output at times, and he can fade. But you know what? Super explosive fighter doesn't. That's usually, it just comes, just the nature of it. You know, if you're that explosive, usually, you know, your cardio is not as good. You don't have the same type of stamina. But nonetheless, huge, although truther, I already said it through and through, ain't going to change. I'm gonna root for my dude forever and ever and ever until he actually does finally hang up the gloves or whatever. So, anyways, we're gonna go to Zahabi, and I'm gonna pull this up because I'm actually not. Okay. Zahabi. He's a flat-footed boxer, more of a counter striker. He has really good timing. That was one thing I noticed. Like, it's like one of those things, you either got it or you don't. But he has really good timing. Has solid footwork. Fights out of both stances, but has a wide base, so he's open to the leg kicks. Good speed and power. Educated guard. I already mentioned it. I said it right away. I think the matchup, the fight styles, it just favors Aldo. You know, this is striker on striker. I don't see Zahabi trying to push him up against the side of the cage. And then, honestly, I just think that Aldo's going to out-physical him anyways. And then the other thing is, you know, because Zahabi's not really a spring chicken either. He's quite a bit older, where he's an older fighter, at least in comparison to a lot of the other guys in the division. I don't know. I think that they really done right by Aldo here, putting him in a favorable matchup. I don't feel like the UFC usually does this for him. And so I'm actually really excited to see this fight. I think Aldo's going to win pretty convincingly. And he is currently, pretty sure he's a favorite. Yeah, he's a minus 200 favorite. So, I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, you know, clearly they moved this up. So maybe Aldo missed weight. Maybe he had a bad weight cut. It all matters. You know, there's a lot of things that are going to go into these fights that we can't really gauge. You know, what their camp was like. Do they have any injuries? What's their personal life? I mean, there's so many other elements to the fight game that we really don't have any idea. We have no clue that these things are going on or whatever. They're just going to hide him. But nonetheless, it looks like the fight's going to happen. And I'm going to be rooting on my boy Aldo. Let's go, Aldo. Moving on. Valentina Shevchenko. Valentina. All right. Shevchenko is a monster. We'll pull this up. I don't really like Manon, but I'm not going to try to be biased about my breakdown. That's why I do notes. Oh. I don't know how that happened, but it did. All right, Valentina. All right, Valentina is a flat-footed Muay Thai style kickboxer, more of a counter striker, but she'll pump some stuff out there. She's not just purely a counter striker. Some people are. She has really good speed, very good kicks. Tends to put her head down and throw extended combos in the pocket. I noticed that when her opponent gets close to her, she just kind of like puts her head down and throws 3 or 4 punches. That can definitely be countered. But it hasn't really cost her yet. She has well-timed takedowns, solid top control. It's like methodical. She's not just going to actively just try to like move. She's going to like try to grind you down a little bit and progress like as she feels that she can. I think she was pretty notorious for getting you in like a crucifix. I think she has quite a few finishes that way. Ground and pound. You know, we know it. She's been a champion for a long time, like I said. considered one of the greatest female martial artists of all time, and for good cause. I mean, she's a good fighter. Like I said, she has a lot of good attributes, and a few flaws, but nonetheless, let's move on to Manon. I'll just put Manon, and she's gonna pop up. Here she is. She's a strong technical striker, has solid footwork, has a wide stance, good hand speed, stiff 1-2. Likes to counter with a check hook. I noticed that. And then the other thing is she tends to drop her left hand when throwing her right. And I see her get tagged when she does this. I don't know why she does it, especially being, a high-level striker like she is. It's pretty glaring hole in her game, I believe. And then her best kick is the high kick. That's what looks the best to me. We do have some unknowns. She's a big, strong girl. She looks to have relatively decent takedown defense. I don't know. She's not easy to take down. I don't know that her defense is really all that necessarily. But honestly, I think in this situation, Valentina's just a quicker striker here. I just think she's a better fighter. I don't know what these odds are. Might be the underdog. Oh my God, Valentina's the underdog. Can you believe this? Yeah, I just think people lost hope in Shevchenko, man. I mean, it's crazy to me. I think she's the quicker, cleaner striker. She has more paths to victory here. Manon's definitely the bigger fighter. But she ain't knocking nobody out in the UFC. She ain't knocking no one out. The only person she knocked out was Tabitha Ricci, and she came in on short notice, up a weight class. And this girl's already bigger than most girls. So, and Tabitha's already smaller than most girls. So I don't put much stock into that, to be honest with you. I think Valentina is going to win this fight. Maybe we'll get it. If she can get it to the ground, maybe we can see what Manon's ground game looks like. But, Shevchenko's an underdog. I'm just taking her flat out. Money line it. You get plus money right there. Moving on to the final fight of the night. We got Bilal. Remember the name. Muhammad. And then we have Jack Della Maddalena. This is your main event. We got 5 rounds at the 170-pound division. And let's go straight into our notes. I don't know that Jack is the most deserving fighter for the opportunity at the belt. I think he's a super solid prospect. I really like the guy. Exciting fighter, mostly. I just don't know that. I think there's people ahead of him that could have probably deserved that shot a little bit more than him. And that's no discredit to him and what he's done. I think he's great. I just think I would have liked to see him, fight, maybe one more top guy. But nonetheless, I'm not going to bitch. I actually do like that they gave him the shot. Sometimes you see guys never get the shot at all. But I want to dive into a couple other things. We're going to go ahead and pull up these notes. And I'm going to bring up something that I think is important to this fight. Bilal. All right. Bilal is a flat-footed pressure striker, always on the front foot. What I mean by that is it's almost like he's always kind of pushing the pace. I think that's one of his biggest assets is that, he's not necessarily super aggressive in the sense that he's always throwing. He's like this madman, wild punching a bunch. No, not really like that. But he's always right there in your face. He has solid footwork. Average speed at best. It's nothing really to admire. And I think that because of that, he's quite hittable. And then his straight left and right side kick look to be his best weapons on the feet. And they're pretty solid. I give him credit there. I think that those two weapons for him are pretty good. But, his bread and butter, this is kind of who he is as a fighter. He has good wrestling. Excellent entries. Well-timed entries. And usually he completes those takedowns. And then he maintains control by floating over his opponent. He's not a guy that just is like real top hit, or how, you know what I mean? Like it's not like top pressure where he gets on you and just puts your back on the mat. It's not like that. It's like he kind of floats over you and maintains control by staying in a dominant position, right? And he uses that to kind of grind his opponents down, wear them out, and and continues to put a pace on these guys. But this guy's extremely hittable. I feel like it's improved. He's looked better. But part of that is like, I was looking at his record, and the people that he's fought. And you look at, okay, he beat Leon Edwards. Yeah, good win, right? I mean, nothing wrong with that. But I don't know, man. I honestly didn't really ever think that highly of Leon. I think he's a good fighter, but he hadn't even really beat anyone. I mean, he beat Usman, but he was getting absolute mauled in the Usman fight until he got the head kick, knockout, and then he did kind of dominate the second one, but I don't know, Usman, I mean, he just got brutally knocked out. You know what I mean? I don't think his confidence was there. And so, and he's older. His knees are a little bit weak. You hear this talk of his knees are shot. And so, does that play a role in this? I don't know. Gilbert Burns. I mean, Gilbert Burns got hurt in that fight. Bad. And gutted it all the way through 5 rounds. Sean Brady's a super talented grappler. Stand-up's not quite there, but, that's where they meet each other. So they kind of, phase each other out in that sense. Vicente Luque, he's not the same fighter anymore, not necessarily. I don't know, and then you go back, if you look at the Jeff Neal fight, I think Jeff Neal is a more kind of like ferocious striker than Della. Like, he's, his pace is a little bit higher, throws a little harder in all of his shots. And he just teed up on Bilal. I mean, bad. You go watch that fight. Luque knocked him out. That's a long time ago, but knocked him out. So he's shown that he can be clipped. And I really believe that Bilal's a little bit overhyped, in my opinion. I don't think he's really all that great. I don't think, and I'm not trying to dog on the guy. I don't think he's fought some of the best guys, at their best moments. Is that his fault? No, not necessarily. I just do the tape study. I look at it and I go, look, I'm kind of questioning some of these things. I'm questioning who his competition was and when it was and how he beat him and all these things, and just looked at the way he fights. He's certainly good at what he does. The problem is he's going against Jack Della Maddalena, and when I pull up Jack's notes here, let's pull this up. We'll do Della. All right. The notes I have on Jack is that he's a technical boxer. Yeah, he's flat-footed. Yeah, he has average speed. It's not crazy fast or whatever. But he has really good footwork. He fights out of both stances, like fluidly, and utilizes a high guard. Sometimes you see him drop one of his hands. He brings his hand down, and I have seen him get caught. But he's proven I've seen him get rocked. Like, he got rocked by Burns, I remember him getting rocked by Burns, and it was almost like it really didn't even phase him. And Burns can crack, you know what I mean? So to me, that was impressive. I think that his chin's probably even underrated, and I don't see Bilal cracking his chin. I really don't. If that happens, I might as well just hang it up now. You know what I mean? I do not see that happening. Um, the other thing is he picks his shots really well. He's a methodical boxer. He's not just a guy out there just. No, I feel like he is a technical boxer. He picks his shots well. He has a solid front kick and a pretty solid low kick as well. He doesn't throw those a ton, but he will use them from the outside. He'll use them to kind of set up. Oh, bro, we'll call you back, brother. I apologize for that. Anyways, he has good power, but he doesn't load up. So, like, even though, I brought up Jeff Neal earlier, Neal throws everything. He throws a lot with power. This guy doesn't. He doesn't really throw most of his shots with big power, which is a positive thing because he's not just gassing himself out. He conserves that energy and he uses it when he needs it. And to me, I see that as it's a pretty smart thing for him to do. He doesn't load up. He's shown to have pretty decent takedown defense at this point. And more than that, he scrambles pretty well. He defends and he scrambles. So I don't know. I think that we're going to see Jack use his boxing and light Bilal up. I really do. That's what I think. I think he's going to light this dude up. It's a 5-round fight. I think if you're going to bet it, I don't know. I mean, it's always scary taking it over. I can make the argument to do it, but I could also certainly make the argument not to because I already brought up some valid points. Like, Della does obviously have power, even though he doesn't load up. He's not using it all the time. He's got it. And if Bilal just starts getting teed up right away, he might use it. I think ultimately Della should be the favorite here. I'm not sure what the line is. Let's go back. So Della's a slight underdog, plus 150. You get a good number there. Much younger fighter. Size is almost identical. You don't have much reach advantage or anything like that. But if Della can just manage to keep this on the feet, or even when he does get taken down, if he can work his way back up, I do want to give Bilal some credit that, like I said, he's got good pace, but he's also got really good cardio, so he should be able to keep that pace up for the duration of the fight. But I just think that the discrepancy in the striking is larger than you would want to think. You know what I mean? For a championship level fighter, I don't think Bilal's striking is really that good, and I think his inability to get in and out when throwing strikes and just being a much slower striker is really going to cost him in this fight. I think that the style of Madalena is going to give him big time problems. But let's be honest. I want to be 100% honest. Last week I kept doing this. I kept favoring, fighters' ability to stand and bang and keep it on the feet, and ultimately it was the takedowns and the control time that screwed me. So I think if you can get it over 2.5, not the worst thing ever. It should be a good fun fight. I favor Jack, and we'll just see what happens, okay? I do plan on trying to go through all the bets, see where I believe the value's at, try to come up with some crazy parlays. We'll be doing some degenerational wealth, the degen parlay. But I haven't gone around to it. I've had a really long week. I'm super deprived of sleep, and I literally just got most of this work finished tonight. So hopefully I can get out ahead of it. We'll continue pushing, continue to try to improve our process, and just get better and better and better. Hopefully we can get to a point where we can hit these. Please like, subscribe, and honestly, if any of you have any feedback, if any of you have like a great desire or passion for the UFC or MMA in general, and have some more like specific knowledge to like actual fighting. I've watched MMA for a long time. I know people that are in the sport, but I'm from a technical standpoint, not really. Like, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you guys. I just use optics. I see it, I take notes. But also on top of that, I would really like to lay out this database that I'm creating of the fighters. Create kind of like, an archetype using, their styles or how they like to fight, what's their strengths, what their weaknesses is. And then I also have another thing that I'm working on with, it's kind of like a spider graph, identifying things about the fighters, different attributes, speed, power. Again, these aren't facts, they're just optics, but trying to create a scale to rate these, so you can just literally put them up against each other and see who you think's going to win based off that. But if anybody's interested in getting involved with this, hit me up, and you can reach me. Well, just leave a comment, and I'll get with you if you do that. So anyways, thank you all. Good luck to everybody, and I'll catch you next time. All right, peace.